So, surrendering to the soul. In many cultures or religions, if you want to look at it, even if you put all of that aside, the one thing that they do all speak of is something called the soul. And there's been very descriptive text about the soul in Hinduism. I haven't come across too much in Christianity, and I haven't come across anything in Islam that speaks or heightens on the soul. You see, the focus there is more of on the creator, not on the soul. But when you look at this, you see, before we even dive into that, you must understand this one thing. If you go throughout your entire life and you have the most precious gem that is on your necklace here, right here, you have the most precious gem in the whole entire world, the most valuable thing in the whole entire creation. And you go through your whole entire life and you miss that. That is a big tragedy. In Christianity, they say something called missing the mark. They describe sin as missing the mark. And that is sort of missing the mark to some extent. May not necessarily be in the action that one takes, but necessarily missing the value, the most valuable thing. You see, in these cultures, they don't speak of how to experience what you are or experience a soul. Most of you that are watching probably don't even know that there's a soul. You see, you may believe that you have a soul, but you don't know it. There's a difference between knowing you have a soul and believing that you have a soul. You see? So how do you know? So the most important question at this point should be, how do I find out I have a soul? See, that question will take you further before any other question. So how do I find out that I have a soul? Now, has that question ever crossed your mind? How do I know I have a soul? Not belief. Then you look deeper into this question. What can I do to poke and find out, you see? Now, I have went through a certain experience in life that not everybody goes through. And through that experience, I was being able to poke at what is called my soul, to be able to find out if it does exist. So that one method is kind of futile for the general public that may see this video or may not see this video. But for the people that actually do see this video, that have not went through what I went through, you would have went through something else. It's called suffering. You see, suffering is a very powerful thing that happens in one's existence. Because without suffering, one can completely miss the mark of life. You see, suffering and life cannot be separated. The Buddha mentioned something about suffering. Life is full of suffering. And the whole entire pursuit of the spiritual path is to have no moment without suffering, just blissfulness and peacefulness. And that can happen to one. But if one does not find the soul, what is the point of all of this? If one does not find the value of who they are, then what is the point? You see? So how can we poke at the soul? The only way that I know of that can apply to every single person is when you're going through a lot of suffering. At that moment, you start to learn to observe the mind. Most of the suffering starts on the mental level. And if you learn to observe the mind, constantly watch the thoughts, you'll notice that if you do that now, you close your eyes, you'll notice that the thoughts, they start to cease when you do that. So if a constant practice is there, then definitely that can happen, where the awareness constantly gets heightened. And when your awareness gets heightened a lot, as a consequence, you see, the reason I'm saying this with caution, because to experience the soul, to see the soul, you cannot go with the intention of I want to see or experience this. It just does not work like that, because that comes from the ego. That comes from the ego construct of wanting to try, to see, to know, to talk about it, and whatnot. So the only reason why I'm making this video is because this can be helpful for one person that, maybe in their moment of life that they're going through suffering. This can be a doorway for them to experience who they truly are. And this is what the whole purpose of this video is, to give you, to not rather give you, but to rather make you aware enough of the doorway. Because if you become aware enough of the doorway, you will see it and you will open the door. So this doorway is suffering. You see, when we have suffering, if we resist suffering, then the suffering elongates in its duration on you. But when you accept suffering and you see it as something that is there, and you just embrace the suffering, you can transcend suffering like that. But to experience the soul just through constant observation of what you call as the mind does not exist, but what you call as a mind, because of your experience in life of what you have as what and what you know as the mind, that itself, if you constantly observe it, constantly, again and again and again and again, eventually, at some point, what you call as the soul will be revealed to you. If you constantly do meditation, sometimes if you want to call it the light, the self-illumination that the soul emanates can be seen. But when you try to see it, when it happens, then it disappears. So it's best that the only thing you do is you just observe. You just learn to be observant. You just learn to be aware. Because through being aware, through being observant, as a consequence of a byproduct of that, the soul will be revealed to you. You see, if you come from a Hindu culture, They say in order to see the soul, you have to clear samskaras and you have to clear all of this karma and all this. That is all nonsense. You don't have to do any of that stuff. Those are all patterns that you can change at any moment in your life. You can just decide at any moment that this is the pattern that has been living within my system of how I function, how I think, how I talk, how I treat life, how I live, how I breathe. At any moment, you have the choice to choose, and you have the choice to change that. You see? So that is why they have developed that system, that yogic system, and all of these different types of meditation and all that stuff is to clean out the habit. You see, because sometimes the habit can be on the genetic layer and it can stem to the energetic layer, on the DNA and the energetic layer. You have the 5 sheets of consciousness. And on those 5 sheets of consciousness, all of that has to be worked upon. You get the food body, you get the mental body, you get the energetic body, you get the transitory body, and you get something called an Anandamaya Kosha, which is the blissed body. You see, the blissed body is, you see, by me giving you this information, it's not really helpful to some extent because this is just all words and just all sounds. I just want you to understand this. This is all words and all sounds and they mean nothing. Same like all the scriptures, they all mean absolutely nothing. Now they do have some value. I'm not disregarding that. But what I am saying is this, all this meaning, this definition that you have given it, that definition does not exist. It exists because you have created that within yourself through your own interpretations. That is the limitation. The limitation does not only exist there, it exists in the society that you brought up with, the parents, the upbringing, the education system, living conditions. All of this stuff is all conditioning. But if we learn to observe, gradually we move towards the self. And then once we move gradually to the self, then what is called the soul is revealed. And you are able to experience and see what you are. Now when I'm saying see what you are, it's not that you are separate from that. This is just words I'm using. They're just a way to convey something that may serve of some assistance. It may serve no assistance at all. But it's better than nothing.